The morning sun sliced through the blinds of my townhouse in Whispering Pines Estates like a surgical blade, painting my laptop screen in harsh gold. I adjusted the collar of my blouse higher, hiding the fading purple-yellow bruise that still throbbed under concealer. At my remote compliance job, they loved flexible workers, as long as you never brought the mess into the open chat. Smile from home. I typed back to the team ping, the words tasting like plastic. Perfect. Safe distance. No questions. My name is Riley Corbin, 33, and today, the woman who turned this idyllic suburban HOA into her personal fiefdom was about to learn that patience is a weapon. Karen Whitaker, HOA president, self-appointed guardian of perfection, owner of Whitaker Perfect Blooms. She'd married into the neighborhood years ago, rebranded everything, including my mother's life, and decided the rest of us were props in her flawless vision. Tonight's Spring Bloom Festival Gala was supposed to be her crowning moment, the ceremonial opening bouquet from her company to the community. I knew it would be her funeral. I logged into the HOA portal, the soft blue glow lighting my face. A cheerful pop-up from the board secretary. Morning, Riley. Remote attendance approved for today's prep meeting. Keep that positive community spirit. My fingers flew. Smile from home, I replied, then minimized the window. The bruise wasn't from a fall. It was from Karen's friendly neighborhood visit last week when she'd cornered me about my wild garden, daisies half an inch too tall, lavender not on the approved color palette. She grabbed my arm, hissed that I was making the whole street look trashy, and the shove against the doorframe had left its mark. No one else saw it. No one would believe the president of the HOA could lose control like that. Pity was useless. I needed proof. My phone buzzed. Karen's name lit the screen. Her text dripping with that fake sweet command voice she used at board meetings. Riley, dear, remember to be at the community center early for the gala setup. You'll hand me the opening bouquet on stage. The neighborhood needs to see unity. It's important for our brand, standards. Our brand. Her brand. Same difference since she'd steamrolled the covenants. I screenshot it, dropped it into the encrypted folder labeled Compliance Retaliation. It joined the growing army. Photos of selective fines, mine for aesthetic violations, her friends exempt, audio of her threatening calls, receipts of inflated landscaping invoices routed through her own company. A new email pinged. From the HOA treasurer, urgent review of vendor contracts. My pulse kicked. It was happening. I accepted. Attached the bylaw amendment I drafted last year, the Vendor Integrity Clause 14.7c. Dense legalese buried deep in the renewal packet. It demanded full disclosure of related party interests, ironclad anti-retaliation protections, and the kill switch, immediate contract termination plus clawback of all payments if fraud was found. Karen had signed it with a flourish at the last annual meeting, waving it off as standard paperwork. Arrogance is a hell of a blindfold. The doorbell chimed. Through the peephole, a courier in Whitaker Perfect Blooms green polo held an obscene bouquet of white orchids wrapped in silver paper. Compliments of President Whitaker for tonight's ceremony, he said. The scent hit like cheap perfume in a funeral parlor. I took it with gloved hands, placed the whole thing in my glass display case like a specimen. Beautiful, expensive, dead inside, just like her community standards. Back at my desk, I practiced the smile on the laptop camera. Soft, harmless, vacant enough to hide the machinery humming behind my eyes. Tonight, I'd wear it on stage while everything burned. Karen had turned Whispering Pines into her empire. Her company wasn't just landscaping anymore. It was the exclusive supplier for every common area, every event, every approved flower bed. The HOA paid top dollar for premium arrangements while she skimmed via ghost line items. Arrangement rehearsals at $4,500 every 2 weeks. No events matched those dates. The money looped back to her personal account through a shell LLC. I traced it all passively with a quiet Python script running at 3 a.m., emailing encrypted logs to a burner Proton mail. Impartial, automated, untraceable. The 11 a.m. board prep call opened on my monitor. Karen's face filled the screen. Blonde helmet hair perfect, smile wide and predatory. Riley, darling, glad you could join from home. We're finalizing the Gala script. You'll hand me the bouquet and smile big for the photos. Community unity. You know, I share my screen. A simple bar chart showed the 27% spike in decorative services costs, all from one vendor. Her eyes narrowed. Before she could pivot, I clicked to the sign bylaw page, zooming on her signature above clause 14.7c. Actually, Karen, I said levelly, compliance is free. This clause you approved mandates disclosure of any related party interests. Your company supplying the HOA while you're president? That's a material breach. Silence crackled. Her smile tightened like a noose. This is a family, neighborhood matter. Riley, you're blowing it out of proportion. The other board members shifted uncomfortably. I sent the encrypted file to the treasurer and the external attorney with a timed delivery for 4:30 p.m. The countdown began. The community center ballroom glittered under cobalt lights. The giant LED screen pulsing Spring Bloom Festival. Karen glided through the crowd like royalty, champagne in hand, preaching standards and beauty. I stood at the back in my simple black dress and wrist-length gloves, invisible until the spotlight hit. And now, the MC boomed. Our beloved president, Karen Whitaker, presents the ceremonial opening bouquet from Whitaker Perfect Blooms, symbol of our blooming community. Karen swept onto the stage, cradling the massive orchid arrangement. Silver paper crackling. Applause swelled. On behalf of my company, she purred into the mic, we are honored to present this to Whispering Pines. She extended it toward me. I stepped forward, gloved hands closing around the ribbon exactly where I'd paid a courier to affix the wafer-thin NFC tag earlier. The hidden reader on the lectern, calibrated by me, pinged. One silent data packet. The screen behind us flickered. The festival logo vanished. First, a macro of the orchids. Then, boom, spreadsheets filled the wall. Dates. Arrangement rehearsal line items. $4,500 repeated. Payments routed to Karen Whitaker's personal card. Gasps rippled. Phones rose. The live stream caught every pixel. Karen's face drained of color. Her perfect smile curdled into panic. This is edited. It's a family, neighborhood dispute, she sputtered. But the next slide rolled, the sign bylaw. Clause 14.7c highlighted in red. Immediate termination, financial penalties. I stood motionless, bouquet in hand, letting the data speak. The crowd murmured, then roared. Karen lunged for the mic, but the treasurer was already on his feet. Security, escort, MS. Whitaker off stage. This event is paused, pending investigation. The orchids felt heavier than guilt. I handed them to a stunned stagehand and walked off as the lights came up. By the time I reached the parking lot, the clip was viral. My anonymous clause watcher Twitter thread, scheduled weeks ago, broke it down clinically. Related party violation. Anti-retaliation breach. Clawback provisions. The HOA's own system turned on her. The next morning my inbox flooded with protection notices. The board activated the anti-retaliation clause I'd written. All payments to Whitaker Perfect Blooms frozen. Karen's LinkedIn non-apology, maliciously twisted community matter, was slaughtered in replies. Sir, it was live. Explain the $4,500 rehearsals from your own card. I sat at my kitchen table, the glass case still holding her gift, orchids. They look pathetic now, waxy, trapped, dying. My phone rang. Karen's number. I let it go to voicemail, then played the recording I'd saved months ago, her voice hissing threats about dismantling my life if I spoke up. I forwarded it to the board attorney with my notarized journal of incidents, including the bruise photos time-stamped at urgent care. The machine I'd built ground forward. Emergency board hearing scheduled for tomorrow. Karen would be there. And for the first time in years, I wasn't the one hiding the bruise. She was. The hearing room at the community center smelled of stale coffee and desperation. Karen arrived 5 minutes late. Face tight. Lawyer in tow. No more president's sash. No more glowing smile. She glared at the empty chair across the granite table where I sat flanked by the external counsel. The treasurer opened with the facts. Material breach of the very bylaws she'd signed. I slid the USB drive across the table. This contains the automated logs. Chain of custody. Everything. SHA 256 verified. Untampered. Her lawyer objected about theatrical gala display. Counsel smiled thinly. The data came from the HOA's own servers. Your client consented when she signed the policies. Appendix D. Remember? Karen's knuckles whitened. This is revenge for personal disagreements, she snarled. I met her eyes. No, this is policy. You taught us all about rules. Karen, I just made sure they applied to you too. The treasurer asked for my resolution. I kept it clinical. Immediate contract termination. Full clawback. Referral to authorities for fraud. And enforcement of anti-retaliation protections. Karen flinched like she'd been slapped. The minutes were signed. She was out permanently. Outside, the afternoon sun felt clean. A photographer from the local paper snapped me walking away from the building. Hands empty. No bouquet. The headline next morning. HOA President's Flower Empire wilts overnight. My mother texted, "Are you okay?" I stared at the screen, then sent a single green leaf emoji. New growth. Nothing more. I didn't go straight home. I walked the neighborhood paths, past the perfectly manicured lawns Karen had policed so viciously. Neighbors nodded, some awkwardly, some with quiet thumbs up. The wildflowers in my own yard, daisies, lavender, swayed unapologetically. No more fines. At the coffee shop on the corner, the barista slid my black coffee across with a small jar of field flowers on the house. Saw the news, she whispered. Those orchids were always too perfect anyway. I touched the delicate petals, real, alive, imperfect. For the first time in years, I breathed without calculating the next move. But the work wasn't finished. The town hall the next day was mandatory. The new interim president stood on stage preaching integrity and fresh start. In the wings, a production assistant placed another prearranged bouquet, sunflowers and irises, silver paper shining, on the podium for closing remarks. Corporate muscle memory. HOA muscle memory. Same thing. I slipped from the back row, walked the side aisle. A ripple of recognition followed me. I climbed the tech steps, ignored the assistant's confused stare, and picked up the bouquet. The paper crinkled loudly in the sudden quiet. I turned, walked 3 steps, and dropped it into the black catering bin with a soft thud. No drama, just disposal. A stray spotlight caught the moment. Flowers half swallowed by darkness. My hand still in the air. Face calm. The light moved on. I stepped back into shadow. Across the room, the treasurer met my eyes and gave one slow nod. Problem identified. Solution implemented. Process complete. On the plaza outside, 2 security guards escorted Karen to the curb. She carried a cardboard box of her personal files. Face gray. The glass doors hissed shut behind her. Reflected sky looked perfectly clean. I pulled out my phone, typed the words that had started everything. Smile from home. This time they were true. I was smiling. I was finally home. The days after the gala blurred into a satisfying grind of paperwork and quiet victories. The state attorney general's office opened an official fraud inquiry after the HOA referral. Karen's Shell LLC accounts froze overnight. Algorithmic anti-money laundering flags triggered by the exact pattern my script had logged. She posted another desperate plea on the neighborhood Facebook group. This is a witch hunt by one disgruntled resident. The comments were merciless. Disgruntled? You find her for daisies while your company billed $27,000 for fake rehearsals. Someone even attached the viral clip with clown emojis. I stayed offline. I didn't need to gloat. The system, my system, was doing it for me. My lawyer filed for the protective order the same week. The judge granted it after reviewing the notarized journals, the urgent care photos, and the recorded threat where Karen had hissed she'd dismantle my life piece by piece. No contact. No more neighborhood visits. The document felt heavier than any lock. My mother finally called again. Voice thin. Riley, everyone's talking. Grant, Karen, is losing everything. The house is on the market. She's moving out of state. I let the silence stretch, then said the line I'd rehearsed 1,000 times. I chose to be safe. Click. No more doors left open. The HOA board voted unanimously to amend the covenants again, this time adding even stricter conflict of interest language, crediting the whistleblower's diligence. They offered me a seat. I politely declined. I'd built a trap once. I didn't need to live inside it. Neighbors started leaving small gifts on my porch, wildflower seeds. Handwritten notes, thank you for standing up. One elderly couple who'd been fined into silence for their American flag now flew it proudly. The absurdity of it all hit me with dark humor. Karen had spent years screaming about standards, yet the only standard she'd truly enforced was her own bank account. The orchids in my display case finally wilted completely. I composted them without ceremony. Perfect metaphor, beautiful on the surface, rotten at the root. But the final loose end came at the next monthly board meeting. I attended in person for the first time. Karen's former allies sat stiffly, avoiding eye contact. The treasurer read the final financial report. All clawback funds recovered. New landscaping bids opened to 3 independent companies. No more monopoly. Then he turned to me. Riley, the board wants to formally thank you. Your clause protected the entire community. I stood, voice steady. I didn't do it for thanks. I did it because rules should apply to everyone, even the people who write them. A few people clapped. One woman in the back, previously Karen's loudest supporter, actually wiped her eyes. The irony tasted sweeter than any orchid. Walking home that evening, the neighborhood felt different. Lawns still neat, but not strangled. Flowers bloomed in colors that weren't on any approved list. Kids rode bikes without fear of a citation for excessive noise. I passed Karen's old house, for sale sign crooked, lawn already growing wild. A single dandelion poked through the cracks in the driveway. I smiled for real this time. No rehearsal needed. Inside my townhouse, I opened the glass case, wiped it clean, and placed the small jar of field flowers the barista had given me on the shelf instead. They looked right there, imperfect, alive, free. I sat at my desk, laptop open to a blank document. The cursor blinked like a fresh start. I typed one line, new chapter. No more hiding bruises. Outside, the sunset painted the Whispering Pines sign in soft gold. Somewhere down the street, someone was probably already planning their own wildflower bed. Karen's empire of perfection had crumbled under the weight of its own hypocrisy. And the neighborhood? It was finally starting to breathe. The community breathed easier, but the real closure came in the most mundane place, the quarterly financial audit. The external firm presented findings that made even the most neutral board member whistle. Whitaker Perfect Blooms had funneled over $180,000 in phantom fees over 3 years, disguised as consulting, while Karen personally approved every invoice as president. The anti-retaliation clause I'd written triggered an automatic third-party investigation, and the state investigators moved fast. Subpoenas flew. Bank records, GPS data from her company trucks matching the exact times of the fake charges. Even her home Wi-Fi had processed the corporate card payments. She hadn't even tried to hide it. Karen's lawyer tried one last Hail Mary. This is a personal vendetta. The investigator laughed outright. Ma'am, the data doesn't have vendettas. It just has timestamps. I received the official notice in a plain envelope. The case was being referred for criminal charges, wire fraud, embezzlement of association funds. No dramatic courtroom scene needed. The machine kept turning. Her assets were seized pending trial. The house sold at a loss. She moved to a cheap apartment 2 states away, still posting vague Facebook rants about ungrateful neighbors that nobody in Whispering Pines bothered to read anymore. One crisp Saturday, I was out front tending my now legal wildflower patch when a moving truck rumbled past. Karen sat in the passenger seat of her lawyer's car, staring straight ahead. Our eyes met for half a second. I didn't wave. I didn't smirk. I simply knelt back down and planted another daisy. She looked away first. The car drove on. The neighborhood stayed quiet. Justice didn't need applause. It just needed to finish the job. That afternoon, the new landscaping crew arrived. 3 local kids with a truck full of native plants. They waved cheerfully. Heard the old contract got axed. We're doing pollinator gardens now. Hope that's okay. I laughed for the first time in months. More than okay. Plant whatever you want. Just don't call them arrangement rehearsals. The board sent me a small plaque at the next meeting for courageous compliance. I accepted it, then immediately donated it to the community center as a doorstop. The real reward was watching the approved flower palette rule get repealed by unanimous vote. Residents cheered. Someone brought actual wildflower bouquets for the whole room. Messy, colorful, alive. No silver paper. No price tag. Perfect. I walked home under a sky that felt wider. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number, probably a reporter. I deleted it without reading. The story was over. The chapter was closed. Inside, I opened the glass case one last time, dusted the shelf, and placed a little jar of field flowers in the exact center. They dried beautifully, still holding their color. A reminder that things could be both fragile and unbreakable. That night, I sat on the porch with a glass of wine, listening to the neighborhood sounds, kids laughing, dogs barking, someone playing music too loud without a single citation. No more watching over my shoulder. No more hiding bruises. The bruise on my neck had faded weeks ago, but the memory had sharpened into something useful. Proof that silence could be louder than any scream. I raised the glass to the empty street. To standards, I whispered, voice laced with the sarcasm I'd earned. The kind that actually means something. The wind rustled my wildflowers in agreement. Somewhere far away, Karen was probably still explaining to new neighbors why her lawn was suddenly too wild. I smiled into the dark. Let her explain. I was done performing. The final loose thread tied itself off on a random Tuesday afternoon. I was working from home when the mail carrier dropped off a certified letter. Return address, Office of the State Attorney General. Inside was a single-page notice. Karen Whitaker had accepted a plea deal. No trial. Restitution paid in full to the HOA. Every penny clawed back. Plus interest and fines. Community service. 5 years probation. And a permanent ban from ever serving on any homeowners association board again. I read it twice, then folded it neatly and slid it into the same folder that once held screenshots of her threats. The army of evidence had won. I closed the folder, labeled it closed, and stored on the top shelf, out of sight, but never erased. A quiet monument to what patience and paperwork could achieve. That evening, the entire neighborhood threw an impromptu block party. Not an official HOA event, No president, no agenda, just residents dragging grills into the cul-de-sac, kids running through sprinklers, and tables groaning under actual homemade dishes instead of approved catering. Someone had printed t-shirts. I survived the orchid regime. I laughed until my sides hurt. An older gentleman who'd once been fined for his tomato plants raised a plastic cup. To Riley, the woman who reminded us rules are supposed to protect us, not strangle us. Cheers went up. I didn't make a speech. I just lifted my cup and said, "To wildflowers." The crowd roared. Someone started playing music. No one complained about the volume. Later, as the sun dipped, I stood at the edge of the street, watching fireflies blink over the now legal flower beds. The new landscaping crew had planted sunflowers along the common areas, bright, messy, happy. They swayed in the breeze like they were waving. I thought of the perfect white orchids Karen had once forced on every surface. Cold, controlled, dead. These sunflowers were the opposite. They were alive. And so was I. My phone buzzed one last time that night. A text from the new board president. Just wanted to say thank you again. The neighborhood feels lighter. I typed back a single green leaf emoji. Growth. Renewal. No more masks. I walked inside, closed the door, and stood in the quiet of my living room. The glass case gleamed empty and clean. I didn't need specimens anymore. I opened the window, let the night air in, and finally exhaled the breath I'd been holding for 3 years. The bruise was gone. The fear was gone. The Karen who had ruled with fear and fake flowers was gone. Outside, the wind carried laughter and the faint scent of real blooms. I smiled wide. Real. Unguarded. Smile from home. I whispered to no one and everyone. This time it wasn't a corporate lie. It was the truth. And in Whispering Pines Estates, for the first time in forever, the neighborhood looked exactly the way it was always meant to. Imperfect, free, and finally, beautifully alive.